r/ask Reddit. What opinion of yours did a complete 180? I was hardcore into new age beliefs and alternative medicine for most of my life. I even started a naturopathy degree. I don't even know what happened, but over the course of a year I realized, oh, so this is all BS. If alternative medicine worked, they would just call it medicine. There's more to health than medicine, and there are therapies which work that aren't medicine, like massage helps incredibly with many pain conditions, but we'd be hard pressed to call it medicine. Doesn't mean homeopathy isn't bullshit, but I think Redditors should fall out of love with this phrase. I had a really bad upbringing. Abuse, neglect, sexual abuse. My father was unable to read or write and was an alcoholic. My mother suffered from serious mental health issues even though we are close. As a result, I started to have behavioral issues around 11. I smoked, drank, skipped school and refused to do anything in school. This went on until I was 14/15. I think it just occurred to me that the only way to get out of this mess was my education and become what no one thought I would be. I graduated high school with honors, went to college for biology maintaining a 3.7 GPA. I did research that has been published and won multiple awards. I proved everyone wrong. You broke the cycle. That's seriously amazing. Good for you. Seriously, you/a B for one. Consider this, you didn't just save yourself. You might have saved every generation that follows you. If you ever have kids, this is the biggest favor you could do to them, and their children, and their children's children, and as far as your children's children's children. I think, you know, where does it stop? When the children are having children, you know. It's just, how small are they going to get? It's going to be too small. Too small. It's just going to get into this ridiculous Russian doll situation. My concept of weakness. I used to think that crying was weak. Being the first to apologize was weak. That you were strong to hold a grudge. That letting go of anger and forgiving people was weak. That hitting people where it hurts the most is the most satisfying feeling in the world. I was brought up in a really toxic family. I have recently realized how much of a jerk I was. I'm so proud of you for growing and learning. Keep it up, AMD. Break the cycle. Steve Harrington is a scumbag. I had so much sympathy for Steve at the end, and through most of season 1. Like, he was a dong, but he really turned things around. Once season 2 hit, I was overjoyed by his character development. He wasn't that much of a dong. I'd be pretty pissed too finding out a guy was creepy as all hell taking voyeuristic pictures of my girlfriend against her will. Like, what the duck? Euthanasia. I was very against it. I used to say that you never know, there's always a chance, no matter how tiny it is, that they would find something at the 11th hour to save someone. I remember saying, imagine you kill someone because they suffer too much, and there's no hope, and 2 weeks later, they find the cure for that. How would you feel? Then I got older, and great-grandparents, grandparents and their friends got older too, and I saw what suffering truly means. And yeah, now I don't consider that and very unlikely hypothetical chance that a cure might be found is worth it. It's not like after having a crippling disease or failing organs at an old age that your quality of life is going to be anything but shit even with a cure. Also, consider the cost. In the US we spend hundreds of billions of dollars on people during their last few weeks of life. Think about that for a second. We're spending all that money and they die anyway. It's a huge part of why healthcare is so expensive here, and most of the time all it accomplishes is pain and misery for the recipient. I used to be pro-death penalty when I was younger. I thought anyone who murdered another human being in cold blood didn't deserve the life that they took away from someone else. Now I'm against the death penalty, mostly due to practical reasons. There are way too many inmates who have been exonerated by DNA evidence, some after they were executed, and I don't feel comfortable with an imperfect justice system handing out permanent sentences. Edit. Change he to they. You stole mine. I remember the exact moment when I was driving home from work, and I heard the Houston Crime Lab admit on the radio that their shoddy work had gotten innocent people put to death. I note right the duck out of pro-death penalty right there. There are still crimes where the perpetrator deserves death. The government is just not qualified to do it when it comes up in conversation. I ask the other person what their number of acceptable dead innocent people per year is. That tends to not go over well. Is there anyone qualified? Why don't people use the search bar on Ask Reddit to see if a question has already been answered? Realize that it's fresh answers most of the time. Also realize that Reddit search is complete shit. If you want to find something on Reddit, Google it. Is this not true of every single website ever? I've yet to find a website's inbuilt search function that actually finds what you searched for. Vaccines aren't good. To be fair, my dad shoved that crap and a bunch of other shit down my throat my entire adolescence. Your dad is a dipshit. You'll find no argument here. Fountain pens are for pretentious jerkwads who want to show off. Turns out, it was just that one pretentious jerkwad with a fountain pen that drove me nuts in high school. And fountain pens themselves are actually really fun. And the online community is one of the nicest I've met. I love these pens. As a lefty, I will never know the majesty of using a fountain pen. Edit. This has gathered a lot of support from fellow lefties and lefties enthusiasts. But another problem is that my handwriting is awful and it's better if I never write again. I'm in college and still write with a fountain pen. As a left-handed, I can tell rollers just feel off and the ink doesn't flow properly. Fountain pens are way more fluid and I love them for that. Edit. Also, I used to hate mechanical pencils, and now they are my favorite drawing tool. Every good opinion I had about pedestrians. After I got my driver's license, I became a much better pedestrian after I started to drive. For one, it made me realize how hard it is to see a person crossing a badly lit street at night. Open bracket. Edit. Grammar. Pedestrians got to realize that, whether they are in the right or the wrong, they're still gonna lose the fight between them and a car, so pay attention. I used to hate King of the Hill. It would come on at the tail end of my DVR'd Simpsons, or even worse. Instead of, when I was younger, the drawings and animations put me off, and I only ever really saw the opening theme before turning it off in disgust. I love King of the Hill more than The Simpsons now. I found that my fondness for King of the Hill grew as I got older and slowly morphed into Hank Hill. This is what happened to me too. When I was young, I couldn't understand how the show made it on TV. As I aged, everything became more relatable. I feel like it didn't need to resort to just throwing out the same cheap jokes over and over as much as other shows have. I mean, there are reoccurring themes like the fact that Hank just wants Bobby to be a normal football playing kid, but it's never going to happen. Wanting kids as soon as possible. With 6 years old, I became uncle for the first time. Both my sisters are 18 plus years older than me, and I babysit a lot between my 4 nieces. I even became a kindergarten teacher. But now I work in a different field and see how shitty my teenage nieces are to my sisters, and am just like, wait a bit, Lon Jared it. Wow. Well, this is now my second highest comment ever. So from all the replies, I gather that teenagers are just a-holes. Now I'm wondering if I was like that as well. They are teenagers. They will be like that no matter how old you are. Not if you skip them altogether. As a kid, I thought all movies were made perfectly, until I saw The Last Airbender. Hitler did nothing wrong. The Earth King has invited you to our/Lake Laogai. Does a 150 count? The first time I learned about abortion was when my mom was very up in arms about the topic. So I got all the horror stories like it was doctors ripping babies apart and pulling them out of the mother. And I was right there with my mom. Totally against it. Then I got older and learned more about it. Was still against it, but it didn't seem like the horrible baby murder thing anymore. Then a friend got an abortion and it all changed. I saw firsthand what went into the decision, what it actually entailed to do it, and how a person is affected afterwards. Became pro-choice immediately. I couldn't do it, personally, but that's part of it, right? I get a choice too. I saw firsthand what went into the decision, what it actually entailed to do it, and how a person is affected afterwards. I also changed my mind, mostly because I grew up and realized that I was only one failed contraceptive away from having to make that choice for myself. And I realized that I would want that choice. I think it's right to recognize the gravity of the decision. I have never agreed with the argument that it's just a clump of cells, but the alternatives, and safe, and regulated abortions, forced birth and trauma, are so much worse. What's more, there are better ways to prevent abortion than by banning it, starting with proper sex ed. freely accessible contraception and better support for single parents. I did a 180 after I had my first baby. I had always considered abortion to be wrong, selfish and murderous, and that women who fell pregnant should be made to keep the baby. Then raising a baby made me realize that being raised by a mother who doesn't want and cannot look after you is the worst outcome possible, and that hormones could quite possibly prevent adoption being used. And why should we be punishing women for opening the sacred vagina by making them raise babies they don't want? I was just parroting my mother, who still believes this. Children should be with their mothers when parents divorce. After my parents divorced, my mom got custody of us and she changed. She'd disappear for days, not leave food or money for food. I was beaten more than I could count and she threatened suicide when we talked about going to live with our dad. We were paychecks to her. Now, I believe that lots of times the father is the better parent but doesn't get the opportunity to show it. Edit. Wow guys, my first gold. Thanks. On another note, I don't necessarily just mean females. The legal system needs to look at all aspects of a child's life and well-being before making custody decisions. Also, I honestly would not change anything that I went through simply because it made me the person I am today, but I would not wish it on anyone else. I think gender shouldn't matter and custody should be decided by how fit they are to parent. I've met shitty dads. I've met shitty moms. Sometimes they're both good or both bad. I wish we could see more shared custody and less parents deprived of seeing their children. Grew up in Bible Belt. Gay marriage is wrong. Went to university. Hung out with LGBT folks. Found out my favorite relative is a lesbian. The duck was I thinking? Astounding how much education can change mind. Grew up full Christian. Ended up smoking bongs with gays at uni. The exact turning point was when my gay friend said, who I always kept my back to the wall for just in case, as we had just hung about in the same group beforehand. Dude, I don't want to duck you. You are not my type. Then I realized I was more of a perv being straight than he was. Started me on the road to respecting women too and realized many of my previous blokey mates were probably more ducked up and gay mate was normal. Started breaking down all my prejudices from that point, including racism. Willingness to change speaks to your character. Glad to hear it. Robert Downey Jr. used to be a drug addict, alcoholic, a-hole, and now he's Iron Man. Wait, what's the difference? Watch Winter Soldier. Pretty much it. My opinion on mental illness and antidepressants and everything related. I always thought pure discipline and cultivating strength of mind was the way, along with a healthy lifestyle, exercising, etc. Then I met my girlfriend and realized for the most part, that's all bullshit. How she struggled for years with this and how it cripples your will, hope and motivation to do anything. I also didn't understand clinical depression as a whole before her. I've grown to be never-endingly supportive of her, as incredibly difficult it is to do it. She's worth it, and every bit. It's really tough to be the rock in the relationship at all times, but I'm getting better and better at it. Since then my opinion has evolved further in that none of it is so black and white. The mind as a whole is a very chaotic and somewhat abstract thing, as is the meds that affects it. It's just one chaotic intermingling mass of facets that all interact and impact the other. All that matters is that you have support, whatever that means to you. If anyone has a partner that is suffering from depression, and they struggle in any capacity, you're most welcome to send me a PM for advice, if it helps at all. Edit. Holy shit, this blew up. We'll get back to each and every one of you. Might take me a while. In the meantime, have a beautiful weekend if you can. Edit 2. 3 coffees later and half a day gone. I've now gone through each and every message. I feel honored to be part of this discussion with everyone. Seeing the discussion between everyone is simply empowering. I wish everyone the best. This is incredibly important. I have bipolar, and hearing someone say I can fix it by meditating or clearing my mind is really frustrating because they don't understand that if it was that simple, everyone would do it. Who would want to suffer like this? Educating people on how mental disease really works is vital. Too many people think it's all in your head. Everything. Like seriously, my opinion of stuff can change every 10 minutes. Username checks out. I was a serious apocalypse Christian as a teenager, all stoked to get raptured so I could look down and watch all you filthy sinners twist and writhe in agony. Eventually I realized it was making me think crazy thoughts. Finally I actually read the Bible for myself. That was the last straw. I'm a kinder, more thoughtful person without religion. I actually read the Bible for myself. I'm constantly amazed at religious people pushing Bible reading. It seems the fastest way to deconvert. As a Christian, I would rather someone read the Bible and deconvert than have them falsely proclaim themselves Christian. And if they read the Bible and decide that Christianity is the life they want to live, then I think that's great. It's a win-win. Spanking. I used to think it was the way to get your kids in line. Now that I have kids I know it's very much not the best way at all. A spanking is temporary. The corner, taking away a favorite toy, being forced to apologize, that's the real pain. But seriously, spanking was always on the table for me, whatever it takes to raise good kids. And now that I'm in it, spanking's not even in the tool belt. A quote that changed my mind on it and really resonated with me, but I can't remember where I found it. If your child is old enough to understand reason, use reason. If they're not old enough to understand the reason you're hitting them. Usually hate quotes like that, but this one is spot on. Swore off booze and drugs for life when I was 25. I've been clean and sober for over 3 years now. Same here. Stopped at 25 and I'll be 28 this year. I used to hate bell peppers. Now I try to incorporate them into every meal, and my husband attempts to prevent me from so doing. I used to think South Park was a stupid childish cartoon, until I actually watched it properly and saw how episodes highlight how stupid the world is, all through the children's innocence. It's my favorite show now. Came out of a coma after a suicide attempt. Checked into treatment for depression and addiction. Stayed almost 8 months. Did a lot of hard ducking work. Now, I'm in a sober living house. Just got promoted, and will have a year clean in less than 2 weeks. JRPGs are fun and I find them interesting. Well, that's changed. JRPGs are cool until you play more than one and find out they all have essentially the same plot. This wouldn't be bad if it weren't a checklist of how not to write a fantasy plot. A main character with amnesia. A villain that doesn't stand for anything. Beating the main villain because you have an artifact and or chosen one on your side. Not because of any cleverness or willpower. Airships are cool, though. When I first joined Reddit about 5 years ago I bought into that whole Tumblr sucks. All feminists suck. SJWs are everywhere and the devil mentality with an isekai vibe. Luckily it was a short run before I realized I was being ridiculous. Baseball is boring, being gay is wrong, abortion is murder, most politicians serve common interest, capital punishment is acceptable, OJ was innocent. I was raised to believe homosexuality was very, very wrong. Like it should be illegal to even be gay. Even though I knew I wasn't hetero, I always thought I was going to hell for just my thoughts. Between 18 and 20, I realized what a piece of work my mom really was, and it made me reevaluate everything she ever told me. Now I am comfortable with myself, and 100% support all LGBT rights. Pegging isn't fun. Turns out it is. I used to be opposed to gay marriage, like 20 years ago. It just seemed wrong that a holy institution like that should be perverted in such a way. Then someone pointed out that marriage is a specific legal contact separate from any sort of religious beliefs or ceremonies. You have weddings between faiths, Muslim weddings, Buddhist, satanic weddings, atheist weddings, etc. No one is saying Jesus needs to sign off on whether or not two people want to be legally bound together. It profoundly changed my outlook on life. Raised Christian. Thought homosexuality was wrong. Never questioned that belief. Even after I left religion behind, I never really examined my own views on homosexuality. I didn't know any gay people, and the only homosexuality I saw on TV was portrayed negatively. This was the Reagan years. Then Kids in the Hall came out. Scott Thompson in particular made me do a total 180 of opinion. This guy isn't dangerous. He's friggin' hilarious. and he seems like a decent person. Maybe gays are just like straight people, except for one detail which is really quite minor in the grand scheme of things. This was pre-Ellen, pre-Queer Eye for the straight guy, pre-everything. It seems like a lifetime ago. I'm still embarrassed I ever held those views. Back then when Avatar: The Last Airbender got aired on TV, I didn't want to watch it because all the other kids at school acted like benders and play fighted. I just thought that it looked stupid, and that's why that new show is stupid too. I always skipped the show and even its commercials immediately when I saw them on TV, until one day I didn't zap away, even though it was a random episode and I had no idea what was going on and who the characters were. I got hooked, started to watch it in its entirety and loved it so much. Now that I've rewatched it and recommended it to a friend of mine, who also loves it, I have to say it's the best animated series out there. Can't wait to being able to rewatch it again. You always need a cool down time, lol. I used to do drugs and party a lot. My husband and I moved up towards my parents and his career took off. I started a business. We had a family. A lot of my friends are still drinking, partying and getting arrested for stupid shit. You become the company you keep. My husband is really good company for me. Was an addict. Then I OD'd. Dropped out of community college. Went to be a kids counselor focusing on drugs. Now I'm just learning moderation to stop drinking so much while I open my own business. Communism is a great idea. You're now banned from /litistage capitalism. I was one of those die-hard Glenn Beck followers back in 2008 to 2010 when I started college. A lot of it was because I was the disenfranchised, forgotten about white guy that was not reaping the benefits of my race and gender that everyone seemed to harp on about. I say white because in America there isn't near the gypsy hate that I experienced when I was in France. I drank the Kool-Aid. He had my interests at heart, and I ate it up. Anti-gay, anti-climate change, anti-Obama, anti-abortion, anything and everything he stood for, I stood for. Freshman year of college, my lottery roommate wore CCCP shirts unironically. We argued a lot. We chose to live together for another year with 2 other guys in a 4-man room, which by all understanding should have been the room from hell. An alt-right gypsy, a Polish communist, a Scottish black Democrat, and a wildcard libertarian Filipino. By all accounts it should have been hell on earth for all of us. But while we had our differences in political opinion, we were still able to have civil conversations and were still united through MTG and our brutal engineering workloads. Black bro and I would go into town a lot for food, frat parties, and to go to the card shop. It really opened my eyes to how vastly different people were treated based on race in America. In France, black folk weren't treated as poorly as I was. But in the US it's 10x worse. I remember us walking down the street to our favorite burrito place after getting sufficiently buzzed at a party. A cop stopped him to give him 20 questions and told me that I looked like I wasn't going to cause trouble and I could go on. WTF, we were together. How can one of the 2 of us look up to no good when we're literally walking side by side down the sidewalk? That was the first instance that cracked my narrow-sighted view of how shit played out in the US. Over the remainder of the year, we slowly started changing each other's opinions and pulled each other towards the center. The Polish communist is now a "you ain't raising my taxes, taking my guns or my Mexican employees away" redneck deep in the South. It's actually hilarious. I used to think that Apple devices were the best. Finally I got tired of it and tried Android. I'll never go back to Apple devices again. I used to associate with the crowd of YouTube that started out with the anti-extremist religion set of views, the amazing atheist, Asian, etc. But after a few years they started to do a complete 180 and started railing against the evil strawman SJWs, often using the same arguments they railed against only a few years before. I almost fell into that mindset too until I got some female friends and, learned firsthand the issues I was parroting the opinions of from men who talked to other men about said issues. When I was a kid I felt sorry for kids with gay parents because of the potential bullying, but as I grew older I was like, so what if they are gay? As long as they love you, they're no different from any other loving parents. James Randi's 1,000,000 $0 challenge turned me into a skeptic. Before that I believed just about anything, from religious claims to alien abduction stories. It's funny how millions of people claim to have proof that they have special abilities or irrefutable proof of the supernatural, yet not a single one of them can pass this test. This challenge has been going on since the 60s. Not one person has passed it. Think about that. That says it all to me. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.